Could you define foundation?
So foundation is, you need to understand databases really well. Then you understand object-oriented programming. Third one, in this day and world, you need to know scale, right? So how do you go from 1,000 users to 1 billion users?
I'm sure a lot of our students have this question, right? Like, how do I stand out?
So I think there is also a brand around you, right? So you need to build your brand, what you have worked on, right? So like the projects like this makes a lot of difference. Like how do you apply what you learned? And how do you showcase that? Right? So LinkedIn is a great platform.
What does Google expect from first or second year students targeting internship at Google?
There is a round called Googliness in interview. So how can we ace it?
Do you see the impact of AI inside Google?
A lot of people here want to like work for a solid company like Google. Can you talk about like the recruitment process? Alright, so today we have Balaji with us. Balaji is a veteran with 18 years of experience, worked at companies like Oracle, Microsoft, now working at Google, leading engineering for AdTech, like a huge business there. So really looking forward to unpack all the learnings from his experience, answer a lot of like these questions that y'all, the batch of SST has, and maybe people watching this online also have. So amazing. Thanks for being here, Balaji. Looking forward to this conversation. So you've been here for about 45 minutes already. What did you feel like? What did you see right now?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen social media on Scalar School of Tech. I spoke to people. I didn't expect what I saw, right, to be honest. In some form, after that, I just said, this feels like Amir Khan's Tare Zameen Par, right, with all the...
You mean Three Idiots?
Three Idiots, sorry. I'm
yes.
poor with movies. So, I think this in a way could be the future of learning, right? So, the way I studied like many decades back, like maybe 1.5 decades back, used to be very traditional, right? So, I used to...
You graduated 2006,
2006,
right?
Yeah, 2006. So, those days, I think, first year of college, I used to study chemistry. I used to go do carpentry. None of that is useful, right? I think very contextual learning and doing as you learn things, putting it into action, and the kind of setup that you have, it feels almost corporate, right? So you won't have that transition as you go into workforce. It's not going to be a shock for you. Lot of cool ideas. I hope this scales. All the best to what you guys have been doing. Scale it a lot more. There will be regulations like what kind of things you can't and cannot do in India, but I hope the government also wakes up to this kind of educational system, right? And this perhaps is the future, right? And this perhaps first in the country.
Yeah, I think this actually aligns with NEP a lot, right? New education policy. Some of the things that they've been saying, we've been executing. So I'm sure like in the future, regulation aligns a lot more. Awesome. So a question that I have for you is that if I were to ask you, what do you do at Google? And if you can explain it to me like I'm 15 years old.
Okay, good to be 15 years, right? So I'll give you some examples of what I do, right? Of course, there are products we build. So imagine, let's say you are moving your houses, right? And let's say you're moving your houses for your grandparents. They want to get what you call the packers and movers in any place, any city in Bangalore or anywhere, right? So you go to Google search, find packers and movers near me, right? So now in this case, part of it is to get you the right and best packers and movers who's around you, right? Within that, why would Google do that, right? So if I just give out everything for you for free, why would Google exist? Where is the money that's going to come? So that's where people can pay for ads to have them show up on the search results. So that's the background for what ads is on Google search. And specifically, you want to ensure that you show the people who are not fraudulent, who are the best packers and movers in the area. So you run ads for local businesses, right? So that's what my team does. We manage ads for local businesses. Is this a bad thing or a good thing, right? So people paying their way onto the top may be considered bad, but actually ads in a lot of ways are good. Because a lot of things goes behind when an ad is displayed. Beyond fraud, are these people meeting the user needs, like location, the price point they were interested in, the reviews that we want to show. So the main point is we want to put the businesses in front of you so that you can make the right decision. And on the other hand, let's say you're a small guy with a tempo, you're just a one-man business. How can you compete with the Agarwals of the world, right? How can you compete with the no-brokers of the world? So we call these small and medium businesses, right? So who, if they have top-notch quality, they can pay very little to find their slot. It's very quality-driven, right? So top advertisers, top small, medium businesses, mom and pop shops can find their place to find customers. So that's a whole business model. So they pay a little out of their business. Google connects with the correct kind of customers, and we take some money, and that's what pays my salary, right? So that's how it works.
So it's super powerful, right? Like if you think of 20 years back, 25 years back, if I wanted to start a business, I needed like probably 100 crores to do all the marketing, let's say on a newspaper, radio, and therefore like only the big guys dominated. I think that's the most powerful thing that the Google and other similar platforms have now done, is that with very little capital, and that's why we see so many startups, so many of these coming in, and it's sort of like leveled the playing field a lot, right? Great. So what else? How's it working at Google, right? How do you? I mean, you've transitioned multiple companies. What do you see differently over there?
See, first of all, there may be certain myths around like Google or Microsoft or Amazon. First of all, they're like not rocket scientists there, right? So they're like very normal people. The main thing is their work ethics and their hard work, right? And there is a lot of, I saw somebody show me the scalar values. The first thing was respect, right? So respect is at its core. A lot of things are successful Google in a lot of these places because people have tremendous respect for each other. It's a great environment for doing what matters, which is to build the product, right? So that's a culture at Google that stands out, and the problems and the responsibility that comes with it, right? So we touch billions of users. A small mistake, and we are also at the, people are targeting Google for the bad reasons also, right? So it puts a lot of responsibility into what you are doing. So people take that with pride, and people take that with all the energy that they can, right? So that's what Google is, right? And that's what Microsoft was. There is nothing like super smart, super brilliant people can only make it. Of course, there are super smart and brilliant people, but that doesn't mean those are the people, that's a prerequisite, right? So, like, I'm not super smart, right? I just worked hard, right? And I transitioned through my career. So it's just the work ethics, your hard work, and your foundations, like the kind of learnings you have. So that matters a lot.
I think one more myth there is that I need to be from like an IIT or Stanford to be at Google, right? Like clearly in your case also, you worked your way
you can work your
without being
way
from an IIT. As well.
So I didn't go to an IIT, right? So I went to Anna University, then I went to BITS, then I went to IIM. So you can work, I mean, it's a journey, right? So you will start somewhere. You can start at Google also, but eventually through your hard work, anybody can make it to Google.
Right. But I think one thing I'm curious about is that you've been mentoring Scalar students for 4 years. Yeah. How did you discover Scalar? And maybe you can share some of your mentee stories as well. Right?
Oh, for sure. So Scalar and mentorship, right? So this happened in 2020, early 2020 pandemic, right? So in terms of how I discovered Scalar, see, there was a time where you need to socialize, right? So where you need to find people to talk, build network, and also spend that time productively, right? So that's the time I made it to, I think a year into Microsoft. So I had some learnings, some myths like the ones that I talked about. So Scalar generally was useful in two ways, right? One, in terms of what I can help, right? So talk about journeys, help people who can get into these so-called, that was FANG then, MANG now, but these companies. And also I have learnings, right? So because when I go talk to mentees, it's not just I'm the one with all the knowledge, but I also learn primarily in terms of the culture, like the differences in how people approach things, their background, and also it helps me understand what makes sense for each person and how can I help in them succeeding, and in the process I learn. So it's a
And also in a way paying it forward, right? Like someone would have helped you, and this is like a way for you to, I think, not just socialize. So I ran a company called Clarity, which was also into mentoring, like I was sharing earlier. I think money was the last thing that mattered to people. It's just this feeling of giving it forward, right?
Correct. And I think for me, my mentors were within the company, right? And it's not very, in the past, it's not very organic to find mentors like who spend time on you, because they're also busy. And I did find people, right? And having a platform where you can scale that, I think we should encourage such things, right? So in future,
How many mentees have you spoken to so far?
Oh, I have spent about, there's some metrics like 160 hours or something into mentoring. Mentors maybe like, I lost count, maybe 30, 40 at a minimum the last couple of years, but a lot of them. The models have also changed. Earlier there used to be sticky mentees. Now it's a little bit case by case, but there are a lot of diverse background, right? In that people from services, people from already product, from QA, from DevOps, a lot of.
Let's say 15 years from today, when you remember this, which is that one mentee story that you really remember?
So there is a mentee right now, right? So Loknath, primarily for his grit, right? So
Where does he work?
So he's right now with TCS, right? So he's attending interviews as we speak. He's kind of graduating out of Scalar. He got few interviews he's lined up. But this journey is more than in one way tremendous, right? So he comes from non-computer science background, non-engineering background. He found his way into doing software, right? And then he found his way into doing meaningful work, right? Now, and there's a lot of family commitments, like he has aging parents, financially he was scaling up, then kids, wife, so a lot of personal things going on. And he was saving money for down paying towards a car, his first car, right? But then they said, like, let me invest in Scalar, let me go upskill myself, that's worth. I would not have done it, right? So he put that investment into Scalar, and post that he has late hours at work. He wakes up in the morning, spends a lot of hours. And Scalar, the actual mentorship course, that program is not easy, right? It's very rigorous, especially if you are working. Late night there are courses, and it's pretty fast paced. You need to be on top of it. All that hard work, then he attended a lot of mock interviews, and he's rock solid now, right? So given any DSA
So you've
problem,
seen like his arc.
Oh, his arc is primarily one Scalar gives you a structure, right, to how to get yourself shaped. And then there is this hard work, which is even more important. So that, I think, to me is like fascinating. I just, the main part is like the amount of things going on beyond work and Scalar, like with this family and things, and ability to grind it.
But it's amazing, like even like in these tough recruitment times, you said that he's already interviewing and saying, great man, I wish him luck. So 191 guys here, if I ask them what's your dream company, 191 will definitely say Google and like this and that, right? So I think a lot of people here, plus the people listening, want to like work for a solid company like Google. Can you talk about like the recruitment process, right? And maybe then I'll follow it up with certain more nuances around.
So I think it depends like what stage of your career you are, right? The recruitment process, slightly different. But the core of it is the thing that holds all of that together is the interview process, right? So no matter which level of your experience level is, there is a good interview process, which today doesn't have any biases towards your work experience, your pedigree, like what you have done.
With pedigree, do you also mean degrees? Like if someone has a BTech versus like a BSc, does that matter?
There are certain caveats to it, but in terms of college grad where Google goes and hires, maybe there are certain aspects for it, but general hiring, right? So people coming in to hire with Google, there is no such, no bars there, right? You do your interview very well, right? So primarily, you should be good in problem solving, right? That's a Uber theme. And how do you define problem solving? How do you measure them? Of course, you give coding problems, you give system design problems. Primarily, what they are looking for is two things, right? Your ability to solve problems and your ability, the thinking process itself, right? It's not just a solution that they are interested in, how you arrive at the solution, right? Especially for things like design, There's no one good answer, one correct answer, right? So how do you look at trade-offs? How do you consider what will work, what will not work? So your ability to think in 45 minutes and have that conversation is a core, which primarily requires at the core of it good, strong analytical thinking, right? And that with that comes your coding, your system design, and there are soft skill rounds which generally most people do well, right? So that's your, and if you do that well, then it doesn't matter. It's a generic software engineer, right? And then they will get placed in a team of your choice, right? And whichever team has interest, whatever their openings are. So in a lot of ways, at least Google and even to a lot of extent Microsoft doesn't have this thing of filtering out based on what you have done, right? They're not going to question you on, hey, this project, this code, why did you write it this way, right? That's not going to happen, which is a good thing because it gives a level playing ground for all people who are interviewing, right? So are they good in their analytical abilities? The history is history, right? Many people have different kind of opportunities. You can't introduce bias there, right? So that's your interview process, which is the crux of it, yeah.
So this is generalized for good product-based companies, right? Like this problem solving. Like you spoke about the interview process, but before the interview, there would be this test, right? So could you talk about that?
So that's the tricky part, right? So cracking the interview you can do with your hard work. Getting interviewed at Google depends on few things, right? Generally, or for that matter, any strong product companies, right? So the market does matter, right? But mostly India is a better place to be in than US, right? Market is generally not terrible. It has its ups and downs. Last year was bad. This year it's picking up.
Is this like a trend across all of these MNCs which are based out of Silicon Valley? Are they really ramping up in India? And why is that happening?
Yeah, I mean, generally the talent is here, right? So anybody coming out of fresh grads or experienced people deliver at the same level of maturity as somebody in US. And there is also complete teams here, right? Like it's not earlier when I started off in 2000s, it used to be like one-off team helping a team in Mountain View. Now it's like you can build the entire product here. So people want to invest in India because it's a center of excellence. People can deliver, people have ownership. So that makes it easier. And 1:3 is purely economics, right?
So you're seeing a lot of these product-based companies are setting up good, large capability centers. But what about the test? Like there's this problem-solving test that happens, right? Which is, again, a lot of this analytical skills. What does a Google or a Microsoft test there exactly?
So again, it's coding, right? So if you're good in your coding skills, that's all to it. I mean, the only thing is there is time, right? So it's time bound. Can you think and solve the problem? Which primarily being good in your fundamentals and just keep solving more of them, right? And that also sets you up success for rest of the interviews and at work as well, right? So it's fairly straightforward, yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of our students have this question, right? Like, how do I stand out in some sense, or how do I start preparing from day one, right? They're just 9 months into the course, first-year students. They have still time till third year, fourth year to start building themselves up, right? So from this goal perspective of getting into good product-based companies, be it like top startups in India or even Google. So what would you advise them? Like you've already seen some of the projects, so I think they're already on it. But otherwise, what works?
So I think there is also a brand around you, right? So you need to build your brand to stand out. And that brand comes in a few ways, right? One is what you have worked on, right? So like the projects like this makes a lot of difference. Like how do you apply what you learn? And how do you showcase that, right? So LinkedIn is a great platform where you can showcase that.
I mean like the game that you saw that you were playing with?
Yeah, and the drone, I mean, there are a lot of them, right? So when I saw the Translate, there's a demo where Modi is using it. I didn't know that, right? So these are like, some part of it is to socialize that, right? Make your brand around it. Second, also your network, right? So there may be seniors who you know, people, friends, relatives. Build that network of people in LinkedIn who knows your work, and there's a recall when they have a requirement they can refer.
I have a good tip here. So I think a lot of SST students need to know that Scalar has a lot of people working for these top companies. And there's a link, maybe we can put it in the description, scalar.com/review. There you can actually connect with many people. Like on the first page only you will find like people working at Google, Microsoft, etc. There's Ankit Pangasa, there is Rishi Prakash, all very helpful people, like very, because they've been helped by mentors like him, so they like to pay it forward. So I think on the building network side, and by the way, they all are anyway following what you all are doing. So when Ayan was showing his project, he already had seen the project. Okay, and that's because of the brand thing that he spoke about. So more people can start doing that because we are all building stuff anyway, right? Like everyone built that image editor in the first 3 months, 4 months. Why not go ahead and share it?
Yeah, I think that's important, right, to build your brand. And in terms of fundamentals, see, there is also this mindset of doing, right, and doing fast. Sometimes you get into the trap of building things. I've been there, right? So when I think Angular came out, React came out, we were all, and the front end has this habit of a framework every week, right? So it's very easy to get into this business of quickly building things. Sometimes you lack track of, so that person cannot understand why to use a column database as a row database. So that is super important, right? So you will struggle at work few years down the line. So ensure your foundations are strong, not just for interviews, but also at work while you build these things, right? So when you put that to work, so that is equally important.
Could you define foundation?
Oh, foundation is understanding three things, right? In this day and age, right? You need to understand databases really well, right? So a lot of things you build is around databases. Then you understand object-oriented programming. Doesn't matter what language you use, what framework you use. Core foundations, like if you read the Bijan Strostrup book, that kind of object-oriented design and design patterns are your second thing. Third one, in this day and world, you need to know scale, right? So how do you go from 1,000 users to 1 billion users, right? How does the systems, and that is looking at things, right? So looking at current systems, how they are being built. So those three are your foundations, right? And practice, right? So like understand why certain things are built the way they are built, right? Go to the foundations of a lot of frameworks, right? So if people also go into the habit of learning frameworks, like they learn Kafka, but they don't understand clearly on how Kafka storage works, how PubSub works. They use Kafka, right? You should also go down below and understand how these.
Very interesting. So database, object-oriented programming, and the ability to scale. Pretty straightforward, and I think most of you all are on it. There is some amount of imbibing happening, and I think it will continue to happen. One more question. On, let's say, so you, I'm sure, hired a lot, right, in these last 18 years. 2 resumes in front of you. One of them has a lot of projects similar to what you saw, a couple of internship experiences, a good GitHub, right, but a BSc degree, okay? On the other side, there's a resume which has a BTech degree, maybe whatever college, you can take XYZ college, but like limited stuff there. Does having a BSc degree give this person a disadvantage versus this person? And how do you as a recruiter look at that?
Mm-hmm. So the order in which somebody looks at resume, right? Of course, there's a category where you hire for firm industry experience, right? That's a different beast altogether. There you look at what companies, what they have worked. So that's aside, right? Now let's say you're hiring for a fresh grad, right, who has no experience or 1 or 2 years experience. Definitely somebody, the world is changing. Like if you ask me 15 years back, yeah, BTech from tier 1 college is all that even resumes come to us. Those have changed, right? So it doesn't matter whether what degree.
Why do you think that has changed?
I think more so in terms of how software is being built these days. It's more around people being hands-on, people who can come. And it's true for both startups and more so for startups and for big tech also, right? So people want to have smart people, problem solving, who can hit the ground running. Then with certificates and degrees.
And a certain sense of entitlement.
Yes, and certain type of entitlement, right? So I think that makes a huge difference, right? Is this something a norm, like not have all companies come out of that stereotype? Not entirely, and some companies have come out in certain degrees, but large tech in operating in Bangalore, I mean, that's one of the last things that we even see.
I've personally checked like Google listings, Amazon listings, and none of it never says BTech is something, like it says bachelor's degree.
Bachelor's in science or tech is what this says. And it doesn't matter, right? Like if somebody comes to me and shows me a resume who did really well in interviews, who has these cool projects, and I talk to the person and I get the right vibe, degrees perhaps the last thing I will look at.
What was your experience in college like? Like if you had to, and I mean like, obviously I also went to traditional education. I don't have anything against them. It's just like I respect what they've done for us. But if we were to give advice, or if we were to build it again ourselves, what would you do differently thinking of your college days?
So I think the last couple of years of college is what mattered really for us, right? So I worked for a FPGA company, right? I don't know if you guys have, it's like embedded systems, right? So
Sorry, what's a FPGA?
FPGA is, these are like onboard chips where you can program, like they will give you 20 kbs of memory to work with, right? Those were the days. So, but the over point is industry experience mattered, especially if you're going into work in new place, prior industry experience matter. So I think do more of that. I think colleges are changing now, right? So there's a lot more dual internships they offer during a period of 4 years. That is one thing that matters, and I'm glad some people are doing. I think you guys are doing it a whole lot more. By learning by doing, I think was not there. It was like traditional concepts, which are also important, but the doing part of it probably could have been more.
Yeah, and there are these few kids who do it by themselves. But how do we structure that more and build it part of the process, right? Balaji, what are your thoughts on a career in India versus a career in the US? I think a lot of, at least people, maybe 2-3 years ahead of them, think about this a lot. Like, is the American dream, like 15-20 years back, that was the norm, right? If you're smart, just go there. Is that dream declining a bit? Like, you read a lot about the visa issue there. What's your take on that?
Two parts to it, right? One, of course, the visa, the number of openings there, like the number of people who are competing for a spot, the number of opportunities there is not definitely at the same level when the 2000s boom happened, then the later 2005, there's another boom. That doesn't exist, right? So the market, the GDP, the market in the US is saturating at a macro level. And then if you look at tech hiring, the kind of work that you do used to be very different in 2000s. Strong product work where you can learn in the first few years of college, after college, used to be the place in Mountain View. Here you will have some support roles, go fix a bug. That has changed, right? So not just Google, right? So I've worked in all the places in the last 10 plus years. The product development happens here. So in terms of learning, you're not losing anything else, right? In terms of pay, that used to be another big deal there, right? Now, California, you pay like 45% tax, 40 to 45% tax. Services you can't imagine. You can't hire a person. Housing is over the roof. Net, you may have but if you're living in Bangalore, I would even argue the standard of life here is slightly better. If you guys use the Zepto and the Blinkits of the world, food comes to you in 10 minutes. They're like, people came here and they just lost their mind, like what's going on here, right? So India is developing in terms of infra facilities and things, kids education, all that people used to go in the US in the past is definitely diminishing, right? So I've had this thought in the past, but now I don't even think about it, right? So I'm super comfortable living in Bangalore and the pay is great, yeah, everything's great here. Yeah.
So I feel like if someone is like taking that decision right now, maybe India, given that we're going to go from like 3.7 trillion, even like a conservative growth estimate of 8%, 15 years we are going to hit at least 10 to 12 trillion. So that's like a pretty 3x kind of a jump. So why not ride the wave here? And I mean, like it happened in China, companies mature, like all of our startups which are very early today, maybe a Zomato, etc., just become something really huge tomorrow, and it's best to be positioned here. Is that what you believe?
For sure, right? And India is growing. Like the startups, I hope some of them comes out of you guys, right? So you guys build these products. These is the kind of thinking that helps you to build the future of products from out of country.
I have a sort of take on that. I think a lot of people talk about Indian GDP growing a lot, but they look at selling just in India, okay, which is not going to like get the GDP from 3.7 to 10, 12. I think they need to sell to the world, right? Most startup ideas that I see are like these choto-moto, in Bangalore I'll do this, that. But how do these guys sell to the world? Are there any tips on that? Like I know there are these platforms like Upwork, etc., where I think some of our students are anyway doing it already. But do you have any insights on how maybe them or early stage startups can sell to companies in the US?
Yeah, I think two parts to it, right? One is if you're an individual developer, how do you sell your work? Like you outsource your hours to some startup in the US. Second is if you're building a product here, how do you sell your product outside? So the core of it, I'll take the second part first, right? So building the product, I think most problems that you solve, look at it from an angle of, is it solving a global problem? Like your problem context is super important. Today, India built UPI, right? Now, Indian government is trying to make that the de facto in Southeast Asia to begin with, and maybe sometime in the Europe. So the problem of contactless payment exists anywhere in the world. So your foundation on what problems you solve makes a lot of difference, right? And of course, how do you scale within the country is also not easy, right? So your first set of users are likely to be people around your immediate circle. So your initial few years of setting up the metrics, saying that, hey, this really works, that's your showcase to the world. And third is to build that connections, right? So this is also true for the first part of the question, right? There are ways in which you have a network where people are looking for similar kind of talent that you have, similar kind of product you have. Then slowly you do the pitch. In some cases, people do that for free, right? So I've seen people who do design, not so much for coding, for startups in the US. They say that, hey, I'm a designer. You have this problem. Let me pitch a design. I'll do it for free. Right? Do it 5 times. Then you become part of their org. It is.
It's a way to get in.
It's a way to get in. So do things free, right? So when you are starting out, if you give things free for people and people like it.
I think already happening, like the Ayan example we were taking. I think it's just the viral thing that's happening is not happening in India. It's happening in the US. Like I saw a couple of comments where I wouldn't be surprised that he gets an internship just because of that post, right? But I want to add one more example. Like I came across this guy, levels.io, if you can check it on the internet. Like this guy is this freelancer who understands that the needs of the people around the world are pretty much the same. He's like, I think, a UK guy who travels around the world and writes code. So he's built like this small software which essentially takes like a normal photo, like if I click a photo of you, and then it converts it into like 20 different things, which could be a business photo, which could be a holiday photo. I think everyone gets what I'm saying, right? Generative AI stuff. He did that about a year back. His MRR, which is monthly run rate, is about $12,000. Okay, for a single guy running that, is it bad? Obviously not, right? Like it's great. And he just doesn't do that. Like there are 5 or 6 other projects that he's done. He tried 70 things, 6 worked. Okay, I think all of you all here have that superpower to start building these kind of products because needs of people across the world are similar. Like you can pick up something which is universal and build software on top of it. Distribution will come through multiple things, SEO, etc. And anyway, some of that you all are on top of, right? So there, like the global opportunity is there. I want to talk about this earlier trend that you spoke of, like building in India. So Google has given us a lot, I think, like people don't realize it. YouTube, Indians and especially thanks to Jio, have learned a lot, I believe, through YouTube. Like whoever has intention can learn. Google Maps, like I was watching 2023's keynote in Delhi. So there they spoke about how 900 million connections were built with, so I search and I find a business and that enables a lot of business, right? 900 million is not a small number. What am I missing? Google Pay, like the biggest thing. So in general, the whole UPI India stack, right? So Google has given India a lot. What are the kind of things that are happening there today where we are building in India, for India and also the world? Could you talk about a few examples?
I think in terms of tech, right? Language is a big thing, right? A lot of products that we have are multilingual. Building language-specific models across use cases, starting from search to maps to payments. Language-specific personalization is something that is core to some of the products built for India, scales to a lot of those countries. So, like a couple of top of mind. But there are also like, India is not really also focused only on India problem. Right?
How many engineers work out of India today?
Oh, the engineers in Bangalore is about 4K, 4,000 people in Bangalore, yeah.
And this number 10 years back was?
Oh, that was like maybe 100, 100 or 200, like core engineers, right? The support teams, but the people building the product.
40x in 10 years. Next 10 years, Of course, who knows, but interesting. Very, very interesting. Thanks for that. Guys, questions?
Yeah, this side. So you talked about the fundamentals that a software engineer should have. So first was database, second was hoops, and third you talked about the ability to scale things. Can you please highlight on that? What do you mean when you say ability to scale things?
So let's take an example, right? So let's say you build a simple e-commerce website, right? You're selling one product to 10 users. That might work. But let's say you want to sell 10,000 products to 1 million users. You need to think your solution in orthogonally different ways, right? So in the sense, how do you ensure that you can handle that kind of traffic, that kind of data, and ensure that it's always up and running, right? So think of how Amazon works, right? So they would have built redundancy, they would have built replicas, they would have had their load balancers, they would have dynamic scaling. All of this is going from one machine, one API, one database to thousands of machines, thousands of database instances. How do you manage data, right? Like how do you partition your data, right? How do you ensure that there is fast lookups? Like if you have like a million users data and somebody is looking for what is your last purchase, you need to get it in sub-milliseconds, right? It might work if you have 10 users and 10 products, but with a million users, your database query itself needs to perform, right? So that's what I meant. Yeah.
Sir, but how to learn that?
Oh, okay, good question. So I think the best way to look at it is to look at examples. There are materials, of course, Scalar, the larger mentorship program I've seen has a great course on system design, large-scale system design and low-level system design, right? High-level and low-level system design. I'm sure this course would also have it, but if not, Scalar has a great material on that. Then there are other resources, right? So go to educate2.io. It has a course on grokking system design. There is a book by Alex Yu, ALEXXU. It's a 2-part book, which primarily gives you a framework to think and also gives you examples. Then finally go look at large enterprise blogs. There is a Netflix blog, there is a Uber blog. Google unfortunately publishes a lot of white papers and red papers, but I wouldn't recommend that. They are like too in-depth. So look at Netflix blog. They talk about what is their problem of scale and how they solved it. And Apache has a lot of open source project around scale, right? So there is Apache Airflow, the Kafka. So look at examples of larger systems and look at what pieces have they used to build those systems and question why they have built it that way, right? So it's not a very easy thing to say that, hey, go through the course, you're done. It is like an art. This one, like even like coding, large-scale system design is an art. You can have to expose yourself to a lot of these scenarios to get better at it.
So this is definitely coming in the curriculum, but if you're curious, like Naman Bhalla does a lot of these master classes on system design, so you can attend a few of those to just like get started on that.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Pradyut. So we as students are, especially as fresh grads, all of us are very fascinated by big companies like Google, Microsoft, etc. But if you were a fresher today, would you choose a big company like Google or Microsoft, or rather a fast-paced startup with maybe a little less pay? Because we have often heard that usually in these MNCs, the growth factor as learning is a bit less compared to these startups. So,
yeah, I will choose a startup, right? So there is nothing more in your early years, the pace at which you can learn the problems that you can solve, and your ability to actually define the product early in your career. Definitely startups. If you can go to one where you can, where there is there are a spectrum of startups, right? Go to a meaningful one. Early stage, pay doesn't matter, as you said, right? So that will be my choice. Google also has pockets of that. The problem with Google or any of these big tech is you will have learnings, a different kind of learnings, which which basically also expects some of your experience that you have to give it to learn, get back, right? Both are good, but given a choice, for me, I would definitely go for a startup.
Yeah, the nuance that you added was be careful about the kind of startup. So like a 21-year-old yappy guy would also say, I'm running like a startup, but the juice of it is missing. But let's say if Balaji tomorrow starts up and he brings in like a lot of his experience, learning directly from them, like say Subhash, right? So you work directly with Subhash, okay, 1-2 years is worth 5 years in like a larger setup. So that nuance and that startup to startup, reading, understanding, looking at LinkedIn profiles, talking to 5 people before you make that commitment is super important.
Hello, sir. Suryansh here. So my question is regarding the burning topics right now, that is AI. So what do you see the impact of AI inside Google, and do you think the creative and out-of-the-box thinking skill will replace the traditional skills? So what's your take on that?
So anecdote, like I was 3 weeks back, I was in a design school forum, like where they bring a lot of design schools and they bring students, and they were pitching, right? And
Is it in Bangalore?
This is Bangalore. There is a company, Zesta. I was just giving them a talk on creativity in tech and what we do at Google. So there's many students had this kind of fear that design jobs are going to go away because AI is going to do the design. They were like literally afraid. And I've seen programmers say, there's a Devon AI, I think folks somewhere will, oh, it's spitting out code. What am I going to do, right? So if there is anything, you need to just feel more empowered because of these tools. It's going to give you more time for coffee and do things that really matter. None of this AI is going to replace your problem solving ability. No AI is going to build a large scale system design, right? So that fear should go away. However, you need to upskill yourself in these areas, right? So even somebody was asking me the other day, are the low-level entry jobs going to go away, right? But actually, AI will create new type of low-level entry jobs, right? Prompt engineering it looks easier, but it's a skill of its own, right? So those are some examples what AI can unlock. And to your specific question, how is it within Google? A lot of products use AI to do step changes, right? Like build the next iteration of the product, which is completely different from the previous iteration. Like how we do ads targeting, for example, it's a lot more smarter. And there is also a lot of productivity related things which we do, right? So you do something called rating, human raters. Like if you target a query, we send it to raters, and they will say, these list of queries, you are precise, you are not precise. So there is a typical precision evaluation that we do. Nowadays, we ask LLMs, right? So LLM can say, yeah, this is a good query for this use case versus not. So that saves a lot of cycles. So AI is here to stay, and it's not going to take your job, but you need to upskill yourself towards that. And I think I saw a lot of mindset that I had in the demo. You guys are already thinking that, right?
I think great answer. Maybe something that I've read and understood is that research says that negative news moves 10x faster. So for a YouTuber who's doing like a video on Devon is going to take your jobs, it makes sense for them to put that because that will get more views, right? Let me prove it actually. Like, how many of y'all know about Devon? Everyone knows about Devon. How many of y'all know about Blackwell, let's say? Blackwell by NVIDIA. What's Blackwell? Correct. The latest chip. How many billion transistors on it? Well, magic is in the numbers, right? So when we were in college, one GPU had like 800 million transistors on it. Today, Blackwell has 186 billion transistors on it. Did you know about this? Did you know that this guy, the founder of NVIDIA is Jensen? He was the guy who delivered these GPUs to OpenAI in 2017, and because of which OpenAI happened, right? Now this is positive news. Did you know about this? No. And Blackwell 186 billion, you didn't know about it because you have to read and like go deep about it, right? So just go to Wikipedia page, transistors, and see some of this today. So that's what typically happens. I think don't make any mistakes. AI is foundational. AI is where internet was 30 years back, and you guys are smart enough. You've already made that choice to come here, and you're going to ride that wave. So just be at it and don't let this compounding stop at any stage.
As we all know that there is a round called Googliness in interview. So how can we ace it?
So I think everybody will ace it, right? So unless you say that something which is out of the ordinary, it's a round called Googliness, which primarily I'm saying that all of you will clear it because it really checks for things like the respect, your ability to work with people, and if you have basically a good working relationship with people you have worked in the past, it's just asking for some of those situations. Unless there is something which is controversial, people are really checking for, hey, is this going to be is there going to be a cultural misfit in this person? Which most cases, I'm sure in this room, I don't think people are going to fall into that bucket. But in general, even maybe one or two exceptions, even for them, I think just live the core values, right? Some of them are being respectful, take feedback, act on feedback, give feedback in the right sense, have a good team working culture. That's if there you do that in the day-to-day basis, then that round automatically will reflect it. Right? No real preparation is needed.
Hello, sir. Naimish here. Right now, you're working in ad tech, which is a pretty niche, like a designation. And I'm pretty sure you worked in various different fields before this. So once we start working, is there something like a domain or a field that is meant for you, something that you're supposed to work on for the rest of your life? And if there is one like that, then how do we find it? And then if there isn't, then how do we know that?
So I think as you go along, you will find things that gives you the most excitement, right? For me, I was doing enterprise software for a long part, right, with Oracle. Enterprise software, building ERP software but then I realized that can touch X number of users, and building consumer software, building things on Google search, where you make a change that billion users see that, and you can measure the impact with revenue, with user engagement, MAU. That me having an ability to build things that is in front of a lot of people is what gives me energy to work, right? And there you do experiment, and these experiment gives you fascinating insights, and that gives me goosebumps sometimes, right? So that I go to work, of course, for growth, pay, and all that, but then that energy where you do things which gives you that excitement, you feel generally happy at doing it. You need to land at that, right? And it will not be something that will organically come to you, right? You need to go explore few areas, talk to people, look at what others are doing. And then once you are there, you have to be also successful in it, right? So the most exciting place, you may not be good at it, right? So you need to find things where you can be successful and which also excites you. I've seen people going into this trap of, let me go to the Google research team, right? So go do the core ML modeling. It's super exciting, but you may not be ready for that, right? So if you go there too early, you will fail. So it's a fine balance. You need to understand where you are good at and what gives you excitement and build on it.
Sir, you might have worked upon a lot of projects up to till date. So what we're going to share about accelerating experience about the most interesting and challenging project you had worked up to date.
So
this is at Google or Oracle, Microsoft, Google, anything?
Any of the most interesting project.
So I think I'll give you probably couple. One very recent, and then one when I was like a developer. The recent one, I think, in terms of how do you understand query, right? So if somebody searches, you need to understand the intent of their query. There are ideas to do that in a way that you can have the maximum coverage of the world. Like you can search for your plumber, for example, right, or your attorney in few ways. But there are many ways in which people are searching, you don't recognize that. So building models and techniques to capture those queries is a very interesting and hard problem, right? So we call that the query recall problem. But in the process, you should also not target like garbage. Like anytime you do expand, you will end up targeting garbage. So this is we call the traditional precision recall problem in any kind of information retrieval, right? So any kind of such systems. So building a high recall system at high precision, something my team has done is doing still, right? So that gives me, and the ways in which you can do that, like team comes up with fascinating ideas. So as an example, the user has recently interacted with services. So this is not a product query, this is a service query. It's one way to discover that what is the user looking for. So I think that's a good space which we have had success, and that's what gives me excitement at work today. In the past, I've built, as a developer, built an analytics platform, right? So enterprise analytics. So these are like a lot of data from your within the enterprise, right? The payroll, HRMS. So how do you build a very simple way to slice and dice this data, ranging from a hardcore data analyst to a very, very simple naive person, to build a simple analytics system, something I built on my own, like with little support. So something where I had the idea, I could build it, put it to product, see customers use it, very engaged, right? So as a young developer, that also, it's about not more than the product, your ability to just committed to that idea, right? So and keep pushing at it even though it's not your business priority, and then eventually see that actual become business priority. That I think was pretty exciting for me.
Hello, sir. This is Om this side. My question is, what does Google expect from first or second year students? What and how much do they expect to first year and second year students to know if they are targeting internship at Google?
Yeah, I think it's just coding, right? If you can, rough example is if you're good at solving lead code medium problems, you're through, right? That's a bar. So no, they don't expect you to solve strong design problems and all that, right? Just be good at coding.
Sir, my question is little personal. Can I?
Sure.
Sir, what advice or learning will you give to your 20-year self to be successful, or to be at a position, or maybe anything which you think is a success for you?
So knowing what he knows now, what will he tell his 20-year-old self?
So I think more startup I could have done. So in between Oracle and Microsoft, I was in startups, and that's what helped me get into Microsoft. The situations those days are not like this is 2005-06, right? So there's not a lot of startups in the world. But working on faster paced environment is, like he said, like 1 year there is equivalent to 3 years. So early in your career could have done a little bit more of that. And even I think large MNCs are going to that mindset, right? So where can you deliver this in like 3 weeks, right? So that you can just get to we call it fail fast, we call it leadership principles, a lot of jazz around how we call it. But in the essence of it, can you move faster is a question even large enterprises are doing it, which generally gives you the learning if you are a developer, right? I'm no longer a developer, but if you're a developer, that would have given me even more strength into my career. Yeah.
Sir, if we join a startup or a big company, in future at some point we may end up leading a team. What qualities should a leader have, on how do we develop, what things to avoid?
So I think leadership is not something you force yourself into, right? So there's only one quality, which is like if you like to see others grow, like if you can help them succeed, that is the core principle. Otherwise, everything else is secondary. Maybe it's your personality or it's not, right? So there's no right or wrong. So if you're not there, don't force yourself into it. That's it, right? So then everything else will fall into your place.
And by the way, I mean, this is a myth that, especially in tech, and please correct me if I'm wrong, like you don't have to always be a people manager or like there are individual contributors who choose to remain individual contributors for 20 years, and they're probably like at a higher level than a manager because of their depth and excellence and knowledge in a particular field. So that's something that actually that decision is far away in your career, so you don't need to bother about it right now. Right now is fundamentals focus on a lot of this.
Hello sir, I'm Arjun. So I wanted to know, like just now you said that having a decent problem solving skills is enough to clear the interview rounds of Google for an internship. But how do you reach that internship round? Because when you apply to Google, like there are thousands of people who apply. So getting to like how to reach that interview stage, like what's the way to apply, like, or is it only the referral way the best way, or like?
Yeah, I mean, see the hard truth is there are a lot of people competing for few spots, right? And there are only that many spots, internship or otherwise. So I think networking is the best way. Having somebody refer you is one of the proven way. I mean, there may be other ways I'm not aware of, but that is one of the proven ways to get into that. The other way could be like, how do you build that? The other question is, how do you build that network? Let's say you don't have that network. So that is to build a build a profile around you in LinkedIn, just do the projects that you guys are doing, build that, make those connections. So that is one. And then the India story, at least there is enough internship that it's not like going to be in this room. I think at least few people should be able to interview, right? So that's the kind of ratio that we are talking about. So yeah, I mean, so that's one way. I mean, applying, building the network, building your profile around it, and going after it. But there is no other magic bullet, right? So there is hard work once you get into those interview rounds, and to get to interview rounds, just building that network and keep applying at it. Right?
Very important question that you asked. I want to add 2 points, important I think for the batch. So Rita is somewhere. Rita is from our enterprise team. She's right there, right? So she sort of is a senior person driving placements for Scalar and also for Scalar School of Technology. She's here because of the Balaji Connect. And so I think the simplest way is where the college gets you opportunities, honestly, where so you'll see a lot of that happen. Brands, etc., depends on who's hiring, etc. But the effort is already on, and you would also see so many people coming to campus, right? So that is the easiest way, so capitalize on that. The other, whatever Balaji said in terms of networking, etc. One thing to, however, understand is that, for example, there's this guy, Rishi Prakash, he works at Microsoft in Ireland. Now, he started his career with Accenture. Then he moved to one startup, I'm forgetting the name of the startup. And then he moved to Microsoft. So even though you start somewhere, you're at it and it's a journey. So not all 191 are going to get into a Google, right? There will be few, and there will be, but after 15 years, it's not that the few 5 or 10, 15 who got in are going to be the most successful. It's generally people who are going to compound, right? Constantly compound. So I want you all to obsess about getting into good companies, but at the same time, like learning and there are many nuances to it. Like there are people like I know someone at Scalar who left like a Microsoft 45 LPA offer to join Slice, and that made complete sense for him because of the same startup thing that we spoke about. So a lot of nuances. Question very valid. Just wanted to add some of those points. Yeah. All right. Really, Balaji, I want to thank you for patiently answering all my questions and Shravan's question. Would love to host you again on campus. Kids are going to keep making cool projects, so maybe we invite you for a hackathon or something like that. So thank you. Great to have you here, and maybe we can have a huge round of applause.